A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Castillo, the Commissioner of the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. I want to say happy anniversary, first of all, to A2IM. I think it's 15 years. Congratulations on 15 years, and also congratulations on making Virtual Indie Week happen. I know we are in very challenging times, but I am delighted to see that people are finding ways to convene and come together in different ways. I'm pleased to welcome everyone. You are all part of a community who makes the music that makes our lives better, frankly. We've really been looking to you all in these difficult times to uplift us. And so on behalf of the Mayor's Office of New York City, welcome. I have to say I am a native New Yorker, so you'll forgive me if I boast that New York City is really one of the greatest musical capitals in the world. We are home to one of the most diverse ecosystems of music, with genres ranging from jazz to classical, hip hop, salsa, world, and so many others, and especially indie. We have the three major record labels here, as well as a panoply of indie labels. And the most vibrant digital music services are emerging here. And some of the world's most renowned concert halls and venues as well. As the Commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, I am charged with supporting New York City's creative industries. We support film, television, theater, advertising, publishing, digital content creation in the form of podcasting and video games, and of course, music. But music was actually added to our portfolio just in 2016. Prior to that, we were previously known as the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcast, working in film production space, permitting production throughout New York City. But in 2016, we expanded our portfolio to provide additional support for the music industry. Now, I have to say that is not meant to say that does not mean to disregard at all the long history that New York City has of providing support for the music and for music. We, in addition to having one of the oldest film offices, we also have one of the oldest arts commissions, who has been around for over 50 years and provided significant support to New York City's music sector in the form of grants primarily, and support for our venues. They've distributed they fund more than 200 nonprofit organizations that present music of every variety. And so, building on the city's commitment to music, the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment was really looking more at sort of the economic development and industry side, whereas the Department of Cultural Affairs focuses primarily on the nonprofit sector. We look to support the economic development of music industry. And so we kicked that off by hosting one of the first town halls to convene industry leaders to understand better the landscape of New York City's music scene. We know that it has changed, certainly, over the years. And from that, at about the same time, we launched the first economic study of New York City's music industry, which told us that the local industry here generates almost 60,000 jobs and $21 billion in economic output. And so as we came to identify the needs of the industry and really figure out how to support our music organizations and musicians, one of the first things we did actually was to reclaim New York City's identity as a music town with the launch of New York Music Month, which typically happens in June. And through that, we would have a day-long conference to talk about some of the key issues in the music industry. We also provide a series of workshops and offered free rehearsal space and walking tours. But we had to take a hiatus this year, but it was certainly a very strong tool in raising the visibility of New York, and we're looking forward to bringing back some of that program later this year. In addition, we worked with the Avatar, when we heard that the Avatar recording studios were in danger of closing, we actually worked with the Berklee College of Music to save it and preserve it as a recording studio. And since 2017, the studio has had more than 600 recording sessions and generated over $5 million in wages. The other piece that we did was we really wanted to support women creatives in the music industry in particular. And so we announced a $500,000 fund for lead female creatives in working in music, which were given out in grants as part of the New York City Women's Fund for Media, Music, and Theater. It's a 3-year program, and we gave out the first rounds of grants to musicians earlier this year. And then in addition to all of that, we also, from our music study, where we learned that a number of music venues had closed, and we were looking at some of the issues in nightlife, we were charged with this newly established Office of Nightlife for New York City, whose primary function is really to give voice to the needs of restaurants, bars, clubs, and music venues that really make New York City a destination. And so the idea is to provide sort of a one-stop shop for nightlife industries to to connect them to city resources and make sure that their issues are that their concerns and interests are represented at the table when the city is making policy decisions. Now, clearly, our work in this space has changed significantly as in light of the current COVID crisis. I never envisioned my role as commissioner to become that of a crisis manager, but that is in fact where we have found ourselves since March. When the city, shut down, we essentially had to pivot really hard, and whereas before we were looking on building sort of a thriving industry, we were now looking at ways to counsel venues and small businesses and artists that were deeply impacted economically by the COVID crisis. And so we really spent those first few weeks just doing intake and doing outreach to those communities. We also launched a couple of surveys of both business operators and workers, freelancers, and artists in the nightlife and media and entertainment space to really just get a sense of what they were experiencing and what kind of information and resources they needed to get through. In addition to that, we also hosted a series of town calls. For one of them, we had over 1,700 participants, so we could really see that people were just really hurting and looking for guidance from our office to connect them to loan grant programs, information about unemployment insurance, guidance for how to really just develop a plan for how they were going to survive through the recovery. And it's been very difficult and certainly very challenging. And we continue to work with those organizations as we're looking at restart and recovery. We assembled a list of resources. We curated a set of resources that are specific to the media and entertainment community, and of course, by that, the music industry. And those are available on our website at www.nyc.gov/MOME. We continue to update those as the weeks progress. The other thing that we have done is the city, in partnership with the city, has formed a series of advisory councils and task forces. There's a recovery task force, which by this time should be releasing a report on their recommendations, and that task force is comprised of really civic leaders who have seen the city through previous crises and sort of looking at a long-term plan for recovery for the city. In addition, we have an internal task force of some of my colleagues, agency heads, who are looking at equitable recovery. We know that some of our communities were really hard hit harder than others, hard hit by this crisis. And so we've really we're looking at it through the lens of how do we build an equitable recovery to dovetail with the work that the Recovery Task Force is doing. And then in addition, we have a series of industry advisory councils, which are comprised of industry leaders, big and small. In the art, we have an Arts, Culture, and Tourism Council, which has a mix of tour operators, venues, arts groups, and so all of these are ways that the administration is listening to feedback so that we can plan for a really thoughtful, sustainable recovery, and really be prepared to address the specific needs of specific industry sectors. And also take some lessons learned from what people are doing in the interim, what kind of planning they're doing, what kind of innovative ways are they coming up with to approach a recovery, and really sort of reimagine what arts and culture, in particular music, looks like in New York City. And I have to say that this work is very personal to me. As I mentioned previously, I am a native New Yorker. I grew up in New York and had the benefit of growing up in one of the most vibrant artistic cities, surrounded by art and music. You know, I went to clubs like the Saints, and you know, went to concerts at the Pier and Jones Beach and other event. You know, just even walking through the city and being able to take in that kind of music. You know, going to the Continental Club. I lived on Bleecker Street on Sullivan Street in the West Village, right around the corner from Bleecker. And so, you know, I feel a very deep connection to music's presence in New York City, and am really committed to ensuring a strong recovery. I know that over the years, the way that New York City's music scene has sort of transformed, has varied from year to year. I think, like, prior to the crisis, we were really on the cusp of reimagining what that could look like here. And so we are picking up on that work in the recovery, and even in this sort of New York on pause, so to speak. We're seeing different ways that the music community has stepped up, how they're you know, coping, how they're helping us cope through, you know, shelter at home, DJ dance parties, live stream performances. In fact, we set up, our agency set up a partnership with Health and Hospitals Corporation and AFM Local 802 to bring musical performances to our healthcare workers that are on the front lines of the COVID crisis at 11 public hospitals throughout New York City. And so at noon every day, a local New York City musician performs on in a performance from their home, but it's live streamed on the Health and Hospitals Facebook homepage. And we're thrilled to be able to partner with them and the Illumination Fund to bring that, because not only is it providing critical support to our healthcare workers, but it's also providing paid opportunities for our local musicians. So we're very proud of that project, which is running through July 3rd. So, you know, when I see these things, I'm really filled with hope for the future of New York City's music industry. You know, I know we have a great deal to lose if we, but there's so much to be gained by doing it right and by listening and working in partnership and collaboration with the music community and our city colleagues to ensure a strong recovery. I don't think it's out of place for me to say that we know that there really is no recovery for New York without our music industry. And so to be here with you at A2IM, having in-depth conversations about the state of the music industry and convening with you all is a really important part of that recovery process. And so again, I thank you all for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this year's NTV conference. So thanks again.